Hi, it's Kim Kanofsky, and I'm going to tell you about my digital citizenship lesson that I'm going to do with Scratch. Being a librarian in River Forest for a preschool through fourth grade school, I teach digital and media literacy, mostly to the third and fourth graders, but to other grades as well. And I teach about 12 lessons throughout the year on digital and media literacy. And I'm hoping that what I can do is work with our technology integration specialist and our STEM teacher to not only teach more digital and media literacy lessons, but also teach a whole bunch of lessons on Scratch so that we can provide a project for the kids so they can show what they've learned to other students and show to the Scratch community about digital media literacy and about Scratch itself. So that's the topic I chose for this. The reason that I've chosen this is because of these ISTE standards here. ISTE standards for students has a lot of different things that I really want for my students. I want my students to be empowered learners. So I want them to make sure that they're setting personal goals. I want them using technology. I want them to be able to especially demonstrate their learning. And this is one of the variety of ways that I'm going to ask them to demonstrate their learning. I'm also teaching a lot of different digital citizen lessons, a lot of digital and media literacy lessons, so that they can recognize the rights and responsibilities and opportunities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected digital world. And then they'll act and model in ways that are safe, legal, and ethical. In particular, for digital citizens, I'm hoping that they will understand the rights and obligations of using and sharing intellectual property. And by creating their own, maybe they'll understand that a little bit better because they'll have to give permission and they'll have to avoid plagiarizing others and understand a little bit about Creative Commons. I also want them to be knowledge constructors so they can critically curate a variety of resources using digital tools to construct knowledge, produce creative artifacts, and make meaningful learning experiences for themselves and for others that they can share with other people. Here they'll be curating information using a variety of tools. One of them will be Scratch, building knowledge, and then exploring real-world issues and problems, developing ideas and theories, and pursuing answers and solutions. I also want them to be innovative designers. I want them to be able to use a variety of technologies with the design process to identify and solve problems by creating new, useful, and imaginative solutions. And one of these will be by using Scratch so that they can deliberately use the design process. They can create innovative artifacts. They can try and solve some authentic problems, in this case, by making sure that they are safe and responsible and respectful online and with technology and sharing that information with others. I also want them to use different digital tools. And especially here, I want them to focus on some perseverance. So in every day, in every lesson, we go over how important it is that sometimes you're going to try and you're going to fail, and that's not a means to an end. When you fail, it means that we need to go back and we need to review. We need to figure out another way to approach it so that we can persevere and we can go on. So whether it's simply looking for a book and we've typed in a word and we can't figure out why we can't find a book about it, or it happens to be trying to work with others on a project. We look through and we try and figure out what's going wrong and how we could fix that. So perseverance is a big deal for us. Computational thinkers. I want them to be computational thinkers and use collect data and represent data, information that they've found through these different lessons. I also want them to break problems into component parts, extract key information, and develop descriptive models. That way they are learning stuff that they can use for other subjects, which is something that is definitely taught when kids are learning how to code. Creative communication is really important, as I'm having trouble with it right now. Here it's really important that students can communicate clearly and express themselves creatively, especially when they've learned something new. We know that when we teach someone else how to do something, we often learn more ourselves. We become more of an expert. And so I want students to be creative communicators, and I want them to communicate complex ideas. I want those ideas to be clear, and I want them to use digital objects, and I want them to be able to show different models and visualizations and everything. And I want them to be able to customize the message and the medium for their intended audience, which is not only their peers, but also for people around the world in the community of the Scratch community. And then if they're sharing things with the world, and if they're working together with others in the Scratch community, they're becoming global collaborators. So that's my goals for this, and why I really want them to make sure that this is not only a Scratch project on digital and media literacy, but a project that they really get a lot out of. So my project here, my example here, I've kind of given all the description of what the kids really need to do, and I've made mine a lot more extensive than I'm going to require of them. But I wanted it to be something that they could kind of look at and get some ideas from. So they're going to be learning to program for about 10 or 12 different lessons, and some of those will be taught in library, some will be taught in STEM, and some will be taught by the technology integration specialist. And then I'm going to ask them to have very specific things in their example here, in their project. And so, much like mine, they're going to have to tell what's going to happen when the green flag is pressed. In my case, there happens to be a variable, so I'm going to ask them to have a variable. So in this case, the variable up here, if it's choice number 2, he says one specific thing. If it's choice 3, it's a different one. I want there to be 2 different sprites that are in use. It could be more. That would be fine too. I want to make sure that there's a loop, a branching if-then statement, and I want to make sure that everything is working. So as students are typing, and as students are answering questions and presenting the information they have, they're also helping the other students learn what's going on. Now, I will have this as an example for students, but I also need to make sure that they're doing most of this on their own. So we'll be able to get to a point where I'll have a lesson, and in that lesson I'll be able to say something like, today we're going to start creating a project using Scratch, and you'll be able to create a game where your friends can either answer questions or they can learn more about any topic that you want to discuss that we've learned from digital and media literacy. And then we'll talk about what is a sprite again, a little bit of a review. What about if-then statements? What is a loop? What is a variable, and how do you use it? We'll go over how I've used mine. So for the sprite Abby here, different things that are going on when she's clicked on, and how a costume can change, what she's going to say. So an if-then statement there, and showing the variable when it's clicked on, showing what's going to happen, and another statement so that we'll click on Abby, and then when we click back on Devin, what else will happen? Well, he's going to say something too. So just different things that are going on for this process, so that they can go back and forth between the sprites, and they can learn all the different steps, practice all the different steps. When they're working on it, one of our goals is always to have students share what they learn, and then it's also for them to go back and kind of figure out the mistakes, or something, for some reason something isn't working. So I will have it be graded. I'll grade it with a rubric. And then when they're done and they've got their score from their rubric, it'll be something where they'll be able to go back, and they'll work with someone else, and they'll try and find ways to correct that, because there's no use just giving them that score. The whole goal is to learn from it. So I really want them to be able to go back and, okay, these are the things that I'm missing. How can I fix that? How can I make that better? The rubric itself will have 12 points available. There will be 6 different variables that I'm going to be looking at. So I'll be looking at sprite, action, a branching if-then statement, a loop, and a variable. And if they're missing, they'll get a 0 in that category. So if there is no sprite, although I don't really see how that's possible, or if the sprite doesn't say anything, so it doesn't have any action or saying, If the if-then statement isn't there, if there isn't a loop, or if there isn't a variable, those will be 0 points each. In order to get a 1, they'll need to have the sprite of, there has to be at least one sprite. For the action, the sprite has to do or say something, but it's just the one. There's an if-then statement, but maybe it doesn't work. That's 1 point. There's a loop, but maybe that loop, it doesn't work. Or for a variable, maybe the variable's there, or it only has one option. It might not work, something like that. So that'd be only 1 point each. In order to get the full points, to get the 2 points, they do have to have 2 sprites. The 2 sprites have to be able to do or say something. The if-then statement, not only does it have to be included, at least one, it has to work properly. For the loop, it has to be included and work. And then finally, to get 2 last points for the variable, it has to be included, and then it has to have more than one option that works. So that one's probably the most difficult. And then once they have that, like I said, they'll go back, they'll talk with some of their other classmates, it'll be different groups, people will go through and kind of troubleshoot together, working on that perseverance that's in those ISTE standards, but then also working on the whole goal being, well, I not only want them to be able to share what they've learned about digital and media literacy, but also to work through that problem solving and maybe a new set of eyes, a fresh set of eyes, looking at their coding there will help them find the problem, then kind of work on it. So this is a lofty goal. I've got to talk with my other teachers in my school, and hopefully it'll go well, and hopefully you like my project. Thank you and have a great day.